So it's a Thursday night, and I'm going to the range this weekend. I'm going to be taking my 80% 9mm 1911. I love this gun. You've seen it on my channel. As far as everything that's in the gun, there have been exactly 0 changes, with the exception of the Olight PL2 Valkyrie light on the front of it. And thankfully, I've got a weird Glock holster that I bought off eBay for the TLR1, Glock 19 and the TLR1. And this, Kydex, believe it or not, I'll show you, actually, there, right here. Priority holsters, I guess. I added these leather straps on. It had a plastic clip that I didn't like, and it fits freaking perfectly. I don't know how that happened. But yeah, it fits perfectly. So go these guys. Yeah, the front end sticks out a little bit, but whatever. Which is cool. Anyway, I digress. The 9mm 1911 is going to the range. Now, if you know anything about 1911s, they often like oil. This gun I have not run too hard. It hasn't actually had feeding issues. Nope, actually I take that back. This magazine has given it feeding issues, but it's going to the range, it's loaded up, whatever. We'll try it, but 1911s can be a little oil sensitive. So I'm going to show you my procedure for actually taking this apart and oiling it. And while we're at it, you can kind of see what's inside of here. It's nothing too fancy, but we'll show that. I'm not going to use any tools. I have a dirty paper towel. I'll get a new paper towel, just so you can see new grease and other crap coming off of here. There, new paper towel. My tools are my hands, 3-in-1 oil, and a paper towel. If I do actual shooting on this, I'll go through with a Q-tip, I'll clean up the barrel, all that. This is just to oil it up and make it ready to go so I can put 300 to 500 rounds through this weekend. So, 1911, number 1, magazine with ammo in it. That's going away. Okay, so I'm not going to put that in the gun. Verify the gun is empty. Lock it open, all that jazz. Ooh, I know. Slide forward so you release tension from the magazine. The first thing you do, right up here, I don't need that yet. You have your little cap. If you have a bull barrel, it's a little different, but safety on usually helps keep the slide from moving backward. You push, I don't know if you can see it in frame, push that plug in and rotate this to the side. There are wrenches and things if it is too tight. I put this gun away oily. Now the reason that I'm cleaning it and re-oiling it, despite the fact that I put it away oily, like really oily, you can see how wet it is oil tends to degrade when you don't use it for a while. It'll get a little sticky and kind of greasy. If you've ever touched like the inside of an oven, you'll know what I'm talking about. So yeah, so you got your plug here, your spring is sitting out. That's cool. Now, safety off, slide to the rear, take out your little tab. Got stuck. Come on. This is actually a surprisingly tight gun that I made, go figure. So, there's not a lot of, like, this is really oily. There's not a lot of wear on here from actual use. All the wear you see, or much of the wear you see rather, is because when I Cerakoted this, it was too tight to fit together, so I had to actually break the Cerakote and sand it with a Scotch-Brite pad, which I have them all over the place. Scotch-Brite pad and a little bit of fine sandpaper and stuff. But flip side of that, it is an incredibly tight pistol. Now all I'm doing is I'm taking my paper towel and I'm cleaning the inside of the barrel locking area, so where here meets up inside the slide. I'm doing the slide first, and I'm cleaning that breech face before I get too much other crap on there. This is a Series 70 pistol, so it doesn't have a firing pin safety. There would be a firing pin safety over here. And I'm also going to clean the very front of the barrel, where the bushing right here would go. So, slide is done. Top, just the slide. The plug is done. Recoil spring. This is a commander size recoil spring guide rod. I think it's a Nighthawk. I'm not sure. Maybe it's a Wilson. This is a Wolf recoil spring. It's got to be, I think it's a 12-pound recoil spring. And this is actually relatively new, so I got to break this in a little still. But the recoil spring, there's two ends of the recoil spring, by the way. There's an end that the loop kind of closes off, and then there's an open end. The open end goes with your plug, and the closed end goes onto your recoil spring guide rod. Little safety latch. I always like to clean this guy up. If it's too tight in here, you can actually have failures to lock back, or that could just be you pushing up on it. I always take the bushing off, and I just rub that down, get any kind of old oil off of that. With the amount of oil on here, I'm actually second guessing my 3-in-1. I might use something else. I think there was 3-in-1 on here before. When I put away my guns, especially this gun, which is all steel, I like to put it away heavy oiled as a surface protector. Not because I need it to run or anything, but I'll put it away just as a surface protectant. If the world ends, I've got a lot more issues, and I'm not worried about keeping this gun in ready condition all the time. So when I put it away, it's more to preserve it, not to prepare it for war. The world ends, I got a couple other guns in there that I would choose instead. Anyway, this one, however, when I do work inside of here, I like to put the safety on, because if you drop the hammer onto just nothing on the frame, I'll show you just what that looks like. It'll go here, and it'll actually go too far forward. Normally it would actually hit on the firing pin. So just to see what that looks like, you can see how far the slide is forward here. The hammer goes further forward, and instead of contacting on the firing pin, and that's a safety notch there, instead of contacting the firing pin, it keeps going forward and actually hits the base of the hammer up against the frame, which can damage the frame and can damage the hammer. Don't do it. So I put the safety on. And then I'll just take my paper towel and I will clean, because I've had contact issues inside of here, inside of the dust cover, I will clean that really well. I've buffed that a ton by hand, flitzed it and buffed it, and then I will also clean out my rails on either end, and then take the top end of the mag well, the paper towel on the top end of the mag well, and specifically the front of the frame on the feed ramp. Now, if you are new to 1911s, you may know, or may not know, that, let's see if this works. That's really freaking bright. The barrel interfaces with the frame, and together they form a feed ramp if you have a conventional 1911. Or it's called the GI feed ramp. There's two other kinds of feed ramps in here. There's a Para and I want to say Clark Nolan. I'll annotate it if it's not correct. But all they do is they kind of cut out the feed ramp area on the frame, and they integrate that into the barrel. This one, as a round is coming up, I do have a round nearby. There. Excuse me. I don't have a slide or a firing pin on here, so we'll be okay. As the round is coming up, it noses from the magazine on the frame and then whoop, into the barrel. So I'm going to get this out of here before I make any kind of stupid mistake. There. But that's how it works. So make sure those are clean and make sure they interface well. If the gun's well made, it'll have a good interface on there. This gun is kind of ugly, but it works, so I can deal with that. Now, when I put some oil on the gun, I'm actually going to oil it a little less than before because I don't need to bother protecting. So what I will do is I will put just the smallest little, no, it's leaking out somewhere. I'll put the smallest little drop of oil on that. It's called the barrel seat. So right here, where the barrel will actually sit on the frame. That's an important point just because that's a physical metal-to-metal contact that gets repeatedly slammed every time you cycle the gun. Not really hard, but it gets slammed. I'll also put a little bit of lube on the top edge of the rail, and I'm just touching to make it wet. I'm not doing really anything else. And a little bit on the front of the rails. I'll just put a drop on the front of the rails because when I put the slide on, it'll all kind of cycle back. There's a little bit of too much lube kind of going around here, so I'm just going to rub that around with my fingers on the top, and then we're good. I put a little bit on the hammer itself, just because, again, why not? And then taking my finger, a little bit on that dust cover area. Frame's done. If you have to do a more detailed clean than that, go for it, that's fine. Next, we're going to move on to the barrel, because that is kind of the linchpin for everything in the slide. We're going to take a little bit on each of the locking grooves, and a little bit on top of the barrel hood. This silvering on top of the barrel hood I actually had to, again, shave down because my barrel was not dropping far enough out of the slide to get out of the way. This is a Swenson barrel, and despite the incredibly low price of like $50 or whatever I got this for, something around there, it is really, really accurate. Like, and it's probably the super great trigger on the gun too. But I don't have any reason to upgrade. So yeah, we're good. I'll probably, like, if I ever get this gun refinished, probably just going to use this barrel and just get it refinished with everything else. Okay, so the barrel's all set. The next thing, because you need to put them together kind of as a unit, I'll put a little bit of oil inside the, yep, we got some in there, inside the bushing, and the barrel goes on. And this, because there's oil on the inside of here, it'll distribute just a little bit of oil to the outside of your barrel and just leave that kind of in place. From here you've got a couple options. I don't put any oil here or back, the breech face or back toward the firing pin, so that stays totally dry. I will put a little bit of oil inside the top end of the slide. Boop. Just 2 little drops where the locking blocks are. Also grab that, put a little bit on the bottom of the slide, and then I don't even bother putting any in the rails because I've got some on the rails over there. From here, lug goes forward. You can drop that into the gun, make sure it locks, and then here you will take your locking, your bushing, and slide it into the locked position. So here it won't come out of the gun. You're stuck. Your barrel should move freely in here. Again, if the gun's functional, it will move freely, and it won't be able to come out the front with it locked in place. From here, your lug goes to the, resting on the sights, your lug is in the vertical position. Here, this is the most tricky part of putting the gun back together. Take your spring. Your spring is oriented with the U shape going down, contacting the barrel. I got some, nope, never mind. It's just some oil there. Without messing up that lug, if the lug's giving you a problem, if it's just flopping around because it's loose, you can take your little slide lock and put it in there. And you take the take the guide rod and kind of in the spring slide it past the lug and up against the barrel, out the front, and then back to the barrel. Your guide rod will have a little slot on the back of it that'll interface with your locking, with your barrel linkage. This can come out. Don't let that drop. So I take my thumb, I rest it on here. I will turn the frame upside down to meet the slide, and then from here I will bring it back. Now, if you have a Series 80 gun, you're going to have some troubles getting it back around here if the frame is upside down. The reason for that is there's a little plunger that will contact, it's a lifter that'll actually contact stuff in the slide. You're going to have to kind of use your finger and push that back into place. Now, last thing about the frame, when I put this on, I left the safety on. That's cool. Turn the safety off. There, there might be a little ledge or something you got to get in. And then put it kind of in place. And then from here, you're going to try to fish around to find that barrel linkage. So I'm looking through this hole right here, and I can see the barrel linkage. And mine's pretty loose, which is fine. But I need to line up that barrel linkage, the frame, the barrel linkage and the hole in the frame, and not let this guide rod kind of get out of the way. So I put the pin in here, there. I just put that in place. So that's good to go. The idiot scratch. Okay. This is the only place you might need a tool, other than maybe the barrel bushing if that's too tight. This little plunger right here, there's a plunger right in the side, which is super tight on both the guns that I have. I will put a little bit of oil in there just for fun, just one little drop of oil. But this little plunger provides tension or compression, pressure against a little ramp over here, and will kind of keep this thing in place. It'll keep this pressed in place when it's all in, which is fine. It's actually, it goes between, it's two plungers and spring inside, and it goes between the safety and over here. So if you take your slide, you put it back to where it's supposed to be lined up over here, you take this thing and you try to push it in place, it might not work. So I'm going to turn it upside down. I'm going to try to get this in, and sometimes you line it up right below or right on top, and you, there, that worked. Hit that with the palm of my hand, just smacking down. You got to know your gun for this. Sometimes you have to take a thin piece of plastic or a razor blade or something and stick it in there and kind of hold it to the side while you finagle this in place. But what you don't want to do, and I'll take this out for you because you guys are special, what you don't want to do is, there we go, is push upward like this and rotate around this area. There's a scratch that will happen right here on your gun. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's not worth it. I like to just kind of rest it on top, line it up in place. Hey, it worked again. Cool. I'm glad it worked on camera. Push the slide forward, safety up. Now is the fun part. Try not to look down the barrel. Put this in place, push it down. If you let go of this, it will go flying across the room and you'll have trouble finding it. And then rotate your bushing in place and you're good to go. there you go. You have a working, hopefully, gun. Put it back together, and you're good. That is how I oil a 1911 before I bring it out to the range. And my hands are now covered in oil. That's fine. 1911s are supposed to be oily. Then I take my rag and I wipe down all the oil from the outside, and it's going to leak out everywhere. That's fine. Little disclaimer. If I was going to be carrying this gun, which I am not, I would make sure my gun ran with it, and if it did, I would use grease. There's a couple of good gun greases out there. I've actually, on this gun, used coconut oil, and it works fine. So, a lot of people make a big deal about oils on guns and having special gun oils. I have a whole bunch of special and actually really good gun oils. But for most of the stuff that I do, 3-in-1, the lubricates, cleans, prevents rust, is fine. It doesn't smell as nice as some of the other gun oils. It smells just like a legitimate old oil. I use this exclusively on my Mossbergs for some reason. They really like this stuff. 1911s, depending on what I'm doing, and actually this gun doesn't need as much lubrication as my Colt. This one I'll put 3-in-1. My Colt I'll be a little more strategic and have grease on some parts and oil on some other parts. And I also treat the Colt a little nicer than this guy. So, yeah. Put your light back on. There, you're good to go. Something that I'm not going to show you how to do, but I am going to load up the gun for a second. And again, safe direction. I'm in my basement. There's stone walls all around us, so the gun is now loaded, safety on. I'm going to drop the mag. Something I like to do if I've used the gun a bit, quite a bit, and again, 1911s are weird. You got to be careful if you're moving the slide back, because the only way to do that is with the safety off. And this is a very loose trigger. So let's see. So I'm going to take. I have the safety off, magazine out. The gun is out of battery, and I'm going to pull it back and see if the round. I don't know if you can see it. See if it stays onto the slide via that extractor tension. And it just fell out because I bumped it with my finger. But if it stays on its own, there, let's do that again. Let's load one up. Safety. Okay. There. This one just fell out. So my extractor is probably a little loose. The last one was fine. Maybe it was just a round. These are steel case rounds. Maybe it was just a round with a bad rim on it. Load it up. Let's see about this guy. Yeah, so this one's in place just fine. So that other one might have had a bad rim. And here, if I bump that ejector, it'll release it. But your round, rather your case, should index off of here. Now you don't have to do this with the slide in the gun. You can have the slide off of the gun and just kind of seat this case in there and check. What I've noticed though is sometimes there can be a misalignment between your barrel and your slide, and it'll fit just fine when it doesn't have a barrel, but when it's coming out of a barrel and being pulled, and the barrel's also kind of dropping down a little bit, that could bump it out of place. So, you know, it's a lot better just to kind of do it in your gun. Make sure that extractor is properly tensioned. Tensioning a 1911 extractor is not necessarily easy, but it is a very critical part of the gun running. Properly tuned extractors will work fine. I don't know how often other companies recommend checking your extractor tension. This gun, because I built it myself, I think the slide is a fusion slide. The extractor is a Wilson Combat bulletproof. I don't know if it's Series 70 or Series 80 extractor, but because you can use both in this gun. But I just check it every time I go shooting with it. I just make sure that it works, because if it's too tight, it won't get too tight on its own. But if you have made it too tight, you'll have trouble pulling back the slide when there's a round in the chamber. It'll feel fine like this when there's no round in the chamber. When you do put one, like I said, because that the barrel has to unlock right here and then pull all the slide pulls all the way back, that round will prevent, because it's so tightly held in place, an easy motion of going back like this. Likewise, if it's too loose, when you pull the slide back, it'll just fall out. What that looks like when it's actually shooting is you might have stovepipes. The slide will come back, and the round or the case will just be kind of flopping around in there. Which I think that was the issue that I had in my first video with this gun. And then also, when you're all done with shooting, and you go to unload your gun, you drop your mag. I'll actually do it. There, load it up. Drop your mag, you go to unload your gun. Instead of the round coming out of the ejection port, it'll come out of the bottom of the gun. See there, it came out of the ejection port. If it comes out of the grip, check your extractor. Just make sure I'm empty. Yeah. There you go. Okay. 1911, oiled, checked for extractor tension. That's annoying, isn't it? Yeah. Good to go. Thanks for your attention, everyone. See ya.